What happens when a quiet librarian's hidden tattoo becomes the difference between life and death in the hands of her captors? 3 men corner Marian Scott in a warehouse on the outskirts of Detroit, zip ties cutting into her wrists. She's been careful for 8 years, keeping her past buried under cardigans and long sleeves. But when her shirt tears during the struggle, revealing ink she thought no one would ever see again, everything changes. One captor steps back, eyes widening. "Holy shit," he whispers. "You're Phoenix. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." Alarm clock never gets the chance to ring at 6:30 a.m., because Marian Scott is already awake, staring at the water-stained ceiling of her studio apartment in downtown Detroit. The building is old, the kind where radiators clank through winter nights and summer heat turns the 4th floor into a furnace. She doesn't mind. Invisible suits her just fine. Her morning routine is precise as clockwork. Bare feet touch the cold hardwood floor, and she pads to the kitchenette where everything has its designated place. The coffee maker, cleaned and prepped the night before, gurgles to life with the press of a single button. 2 tablespoons of grounds, 8 ounces of water, no sugar, no cream. The same breakfast every day. Oatmeal with cinnamon, a single piece of whole grain toast, half a grapefruit if she remembered to buy groceries. Marian catches her reflection in the bathroom mirror while brushing her teeth. Mousy brown hair pulled back in a perpetual ponytail, wire-rimmed glasses that she doesn't actually need, and the carefully cultivated appearance of someone who fades into backgrounds. Her neighbors in the building think she's a graduate student, maybe working on a PhD in something boring like library science or medieval literature. They're half right about the library part. The Detroit Public Library's Central Branch becomes her sanctuary, every weekday at 8:45 a.m. sharp. She works in the archives department, a basement kingdom of yellowing documents and forgotten histories where visitors are rare and questions are rarer. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patricia Henderson, hired her 3 years ago based on her meticulous attention to detail and apparent comfort with solitude. "Most people can't handle the quiet down here," Patricia had said during the interview. "It drives them crazy after a week." Marian had smiled and lied easily. "I prefer quiet. It helps me focus." What Patricia doesn't know is that Marian chose the archives specifically because they're isolated, climate-controlled, and have only one entrance. Old habits from a different life, when situational awareness meant survival rather than paranoia. She catalogs historical documents with reverent care, her fingers gentle on papers that chronicle Detroit's industrial rise and economic collapse. Each manila folder gets labeled with her precise handwriting, each document photographed and digitized according to protocol she helped design. The other librarians treat her with the polite distance reserved for colleagues who do essential work, but rarely surface for staff meetings. They know her as the woman who remembers every filing system, who can locate any document within minutes, who never calls in sick and always volunteers for holiday shifts. She's reliable, unremarkable, and exactly as forgettable as she intends to be. Her lunch breaks are solitary affairs spent in Cadillac Square, where she feeds pigeons from a bench positioned to observe 3 exits and monitor foot traffic patterns. The birds know her schedule, gathering in expectant clusters as she unwraps the same turkey sandwich from the same brown paper bag. She counts them unconsciously 17 regulars, plus occasional visitors, noting which ones limp, which ones have damaged wings, which ones watch for predators with the vigilance of creatures that understand survival. The pigeons remind her of something she tries not to think about: their constant alertness, the way they position themselves for quick escape, how they recognize faces and remember threats. She tears bread into precise pieces, scattering crumbs while scanning faces in the crowd through peripheral vision. 8 years of practice have taught her to identify potential surveillance without appearing paranoid, to catalog exits without seeming nervous, to blend into urban camouflage while remaining tactically aware. Her apartment building houses the sort of tenants who mind their own business. Mrs. Chun on the second floor, who runs a cash-only alteration shop. Marcus, the night shift security guard who plays jazz loud enough to vibrate through thin walls. The college students who rotate through semester leases, too focused on exams. And part-time jobs to notice their quiet neighbor who never has visitors and never makes noise. Marian's studio is spartanly furnished with second-hand pieces that could be abandoned without regret. A futon that serves as both couch and bed, a small dining table she uses for meals and paperwork, shelves lined with library science textbooks she bought to maintain her cover story. Everything is clean, organized, and deliberately impersonal. No photographs, no artwork, no personal touches that might reveal glimpses of who she used to be. The only deviation from perfect anonymity sits in her bedroom closet, a locked metal box containing items she hasn't touched in 3 years. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, rest documents with names she no longer uses, credentials for organizations that officially don't exist, and cash in 3 different currencies. She keeps the box not from nostalgia but from pragmatism. Some pasts require documentation, even when you're desperate to forget them. Her evenings follow the same pattern as her mornings: predictable, solitary, safe. Dinner is usually soup and salad, eaten while reading library journals or working crossword puzzles. She owns a television but rarely turns it on, preferring the silence that allows her to monitor sounds in the hallway. By 10 p.m., she's prepared for the next day, clothes laid out, lunch packed, coffee maker ready. By 10:30, she's lying on the futon in complete darkness, listening to the building settle around her. Sleep comes easier now than it did 3 years ago, when every creak and footstep triggered adrenaline surges that left her awake until dawn. The nightmares are less frequent, the hypervigilance more manageable. She's learned to function on the edge of normal, close enough to blend in but alert enough to run if running becomes necessary. It's not healing exactly, but it's functional survival disguised as mundane existence. The transformation from her previous life to Marian Scott, librarian, required surgical precision. Every connection severed, every trail erased, every identifying characteristic altered or hidden. The most important change involves clothing choices that keep her shoulder blades covered at all times. Cardigans in summer, sweaters in spring, blazers when the weather turns warm. She's perfected the art of never removing outer layers, never changing in public spaces, never revealing the ink that would instantly identify her to anyone who knew what to look for. Her coworkers assume she's modest or maybe has body image issues. They've stopped inviting her to pool parties or beach outings after she politely declined every invitation, with vague excuses about sun sensitivity. The truth is more complicated. The tattoo covering her left shoulder blade is a masterpiece of meaning and memory, but it's also a death sentence if the wrong people see it. So she keeps it hidden beneath layers of careful anonymity, buried under the same deliberate dullness that makes Marian Scott invisible. The routine works because it's sustainable. 8 years of the same patterns, the same routes, the same carefully constructed normalcy. She's become genuinely good at library work, finding unexpected satisfaction in preserving historical documents and helping occasional researchers navigate archived materials. The work isn't exciting, but excitement is what she spent nearly a decade avoiding. On Friday afternoons, she allows herself one small deviation from routine: coffee at Bean and Brew, a small cafe 3 blocks from the library. She sits at the same corner table with her back to the wall, nursing a single cup of black coffee while reading whatever paperback novel she picked up from the library's discard pile. The baristas know her order but not her name. The regular customers recognize her face, but never attempt conversation. She's achieved the perfect balance of familiar but unknown, present but forgettable. This Friday starts like every other. The autumn air carries the scent of dying leaves and distant industrial smoke, Detroit's signature perfume of decay and persistence. Marian walks her usual route, timing her steps to arrive at Bean and Brew at exactly 4:15 p.m. She orders black coffee and finds her corner table available, settling in with a worn copy of a mystery novel whose plot she forget by Monday. What she doesn't notice is the man at the counter who glances her way twice while ordering his espresso, or the woman near the window who pretends to read while photographing customers with her phone. They're professionals, careful not to trigger the survival instincts that kept Marian alive through years when detection meant death. But after 8 years of successful hiding, her edge has dulled just enough to miss the signs that her carefully constructed anonymity is about to shatter. Coffee tastes the same as always. The novel holds her attention with its familiar rhythms of suspense and revelation. Outside, Detroit continues its slow resurrection. Construction cranes punctuating a skyline rebuilding itself block by block. Marian finishes her coffee, leaves exact change plus a modest tip, and walks toward her apartment building through streets that feel as safe as anywhere can feel for someone with her particular history. She doesn't know that 3 phones are now tracking her movement, or that tomorrow will bring the kind of violence she thought she'd left behind forever. The quiet life she's built is about to collide with the explosive past she's worked so hard to bury, and the tattoo she's kept hidden for 8 years is about to become either her salvation or her epitaph. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Saturday morning shatters Marian's routine before she's fully awake. The sound isn't her alarm, it's her phone buzzing with a text from an unknown number. 3 words that turn her blood to ice water. We found you. She's moving before conscious thought kicks in, muscle memory from another life taking control. The phone gets smashed against the bathroom tiles, pieces scattered into the toilet and flushed. Her go bag, hidden behind a false panel in the closet, contains everything she needs: cash, fake IDs, a burner phone, and documents that will let her disappear again. She's practiced this evacuation 100 times in her mind, but never thought she'd need it. The locked metal box reveals its secrets as she works with steady hands despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Elena Rodriguez, Rebecca Turner, Jessica Chen identities she can slip into like comfortable clothes, each with credit histories and employment records that will pass casual inspection. Marian Scott was always meant to be temporary, but 8 years of safety made her forget how temporary. She's dressed and ready to run within 12 minutes, but something stops her at the door. Through the peephole, the hallway looks normal. Mrs. Chun's morning soap opera drifts through thin walls. Marcus is probably sleeping off his night shift. The college kids won't surface until noon. Everything appears exactly as it should, which makes the wrongness harder to identify. Her phone, the burner from the go bag, buzzes with another text. This time it's a photo. Herself at Bean and Brew yesterday, captured through the cafe window. The angle is professional, the quality high, enough to suggest expensive equipment. Below the image, a message: Thunderbird Coffee, 2 p.m. Come alone or we visit your librarian friends. The threat is elegant in its simplicity. They've found her, identified her workplace, probably mapped her entire routine. Running now would only confirm their intelligence while abandoning innocent people to potential violence. Mrs. Henderson, who gave her a chance when she had no references. The college kids who never bothered her, but smiled politely in the hallway. They don't deserve to become collateral damage in a war they don't even know exists. Marian sets the go bag by the door, but doesn't leave. Instead, she opens her laptop and begins accessing systems she hasn't touched in 3 years. The library's security cameras show normal weekend activity: a few researchers, some homeless people seeking warmth, staff rotating through scheduled maintenance. Nothing unusual, but that's what worries her. Professionals don't announce themselves until they're ready to strike. Thunderbird Coffee sits in a gentrified section of Detroit, where art galleries occupy former crack houses and organic bistros. Serve $15 salads to urban pioneers. Marian knows the location, a corner building with good sightlines, multiple exits, and the kind of crowd that minds its own business. Smart choice for a meeting that needs to look casual while feeling dangerous. She spends the morning conducting surveillance from her apartment window, watching for patterns that don't belong. A van parked too long in the loading zone. Pedestrians who circle the block without entering businesses. Anything that suggests professional watchers studying the area. By 11 a.m., she's identified 3 possible positions that could be monitoring her building, but nothing definitive enough to confirm. The decision to attend the meeting isn't brave, it's calculated. 8 years of hiding has taught her that some confrontations are inevitable, and choosing the time and place gives her marginal advantages over being hunted like an animal. She leaves through the building's basement exit, a route she's mapped for exactly this contingency, emerging 3 blocks away through a connected parking garage. Her clothing choices are deliberate. Dark jeans, sneakers with good traction, a lightweight jacket over a button-down shirt that conceals her shoulder. Blades while allowing freedom of movement. No jewelry, no accessories that could be grabbed. Nothing that would impede her ability to run or fight if the meeting goes sideways. The walk to Thunderbird takes 47 minutes using a route that allows her to check for surveillance. She doubles back twice, uses reflective surfaces to monitor followers, and makes random stops to force anyone tailing her to reveal themselves. By the time she reaches the coffee shop, she's reasonably confident she's traveling alone. But reasonably confident isn't the same as certain. Thunderbird's interior matches its neighborhood. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, baristas with elaborate tattoos and carefully disheveled hair. The Saturday crowd consists of laptop warriors nursing single drinks for hours, couples sharing organic pastries, and the occasional group of friends debating art or politics with the passion of people who've never faced real consequences. It's aggressively normal, which makes it perfect camouflage for abnormal business. She orders black coffee and finds a table positioned to observe both entrances, while keeping her back to a solid wall. The tactical positioning feels natural after years of practice, but she notices other customers responding to her movements with subtle discomfort. Something about her presence registers as predatory, even when she's trying to appear harmless. At exactly 2 p.m., a man approaches her table with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. He's tall, well-dressed in a way that suggests money but not ostentation, with gray eyes that catalog details like a recording device. His smile is warm and completely artificial, the kind practiced by professionals who use charm as a weapon. "Marian Scott," he says, settling into the chair across from her without invitation. "Though I suspect that's not the name your mother gave you." His voice carries a slight southern accent, probably Georgia or South Carolina, but accents can be manufactured as easily as identities. She doesn't respond immediately, using the silence to study him. His hands are soft but scarred along the knuckles. His jacket hangs slightly heavy on the left side, suggesting a shoulder holster. Most importantly, his eyes never stop moving, constantly cataloging exits and potential threats. Whatever organization he represents, they sent someone who understands the stakes. "You have my attention," she finally says, keeping her voice neutral. "What do you want?" His laugh is genuine, carrying notes of appreciation and respect. Direct. "I admire that. In my experience, people in your situation usually waste time with denials or negotiations." He reaches into his jacket slowly, retrieving the tablet which he places on the table between them. "I want to show you something that will change how you think about your current situation." The tablet displays a series of photographs that make Marian's coffee taste like ash. Images of her apartment building from multiple angles, Her workplace. Captured during different times of day. Her routine mapped with the precision of a military intelligence operation. But the final photo is what makes her hands clench into fists. Mrs. Henderson leaving the library after her evening shift, completely unaware of the telephoto lens tracking her movements. "We've been watching for 6 months, the man explains. Conversationally. Your operational security is impressive. It took considerable resources to confirm your identity. But once we were certain, mapping your life became relatively straightforward. You've grown comfortable, Marian. Comfort makes people predictable." She forces herself to relax, to project calm while her mind races through response options. Running isn't viable with innocent people at risk. Fighting in a crowded cafe would endanger civilians and accomplish nothing. That leaves negotiation, which means discovering what they want badly enough to spend 6 months hunting her. "You mentioned my situation," she says. "What situation would that be?" His smile widens, revealing teeth that are too perfect to be natural. "The situation where Phoenix, one of the most effective operatives in Blackwater International's history, faked her death and vanished with classified intelligence that certain parties are very interested in recovering." The name hits her like a physical blow, even though she was expecting it. Phoenix, her operational codename during 3 years of assignments that officially never happened for an organization that publicly denied her existence. She thought she'd buried Phoenix along with everything else, but apparently some graves aren't deep enough. "Phoenix died in Beirut," she says carefully. "I read about it in the papers." "Phoenix died in a car bombing that left no recoverable remains," he corrects. Very convenient for someone who needed to disappear completely. The question is whether she took anything with her that doesn't belong to her. Now they're approaching the real purpose of this meeting. Not revenge, not justice, but recovery of something valuable enough to justify 8 years of searching. Marian runs through mental inventories of everything she took when she fled: documents, digital files, operational records that could expose networks spanning 3 continents. The intelligence was her insurance policy, proof of crimes committed. In democracy's name, that would ensure her former employers left her alone. Apparently, someone's willing to break that unspoken agreement. "Even if your fairy tale were true," she says, "what makes you think she'd cooperate with people who are threatening her friends?" His expression doesn't change, but something shifts in his posture. The casual friendliness disappears, replaced by the coiled tension of a predator preparing to strike. Because Phoenix was always pragmatic. She understood that some fights can't be won, only survived. This is one of those fights. The tablet screen changes to display a new image. Architectural plans of the library's basement level, with her work station highlighted in red. They know exactly where she spends her days, probably have the building's security codes, definitely have resources she can't match. The message is clear. There's nowhere left to hide. "You have 48 hours to consider my offer," he says, standing with fluid grace. "After that, we implement less diplomatic solutions." He pauses at her shoulder, close enough that she can smell expensive cologne and gun oil. "For what it's worth, I hope you make the smart choice. Phoenix was a professional. I'd hate to see her end her career as a liability." He's gone before she can respond, melting into the Saturday crowd like smoke into air. Marian sits alone with her cooling coffee and the knowledge that 8 years of careful anonymity have just evaporated. The quiet life she built is ending. Whether she chooses to abandon it or watches it burn around her, the tattoo on her shoulder blade suddenly feels like it's burning, even though she knows the sensation is psychosomatic. But the ink is real, and so is the history it represents. Phoenix is dead, but the woman who took her place is about to discover whether she remembers how to fight. 48 hours becomes 36 when they move early. Marian wakes to the sound of her apartment door's deadbolt turning with surgical precision. Professional lockpicks, applied by hands that know their business. She's been expecting this acceleration, giving someone 48 hours to think usually results in 48 hours of planning countermeasures. Smart operators never honor their own deadlines. She rolls off the futon silently, grabbing the Sig Sauer P226 from underneath the coffee table where it's been waiting since yesterday's meeting. 3 rounds chambered, safety off, muscle memory guiding her hands through motions she practiced 10,000 times in another life. The apartment's layout gives her one advantage. They have to come through a narrow hallway that funnels attackers into a killing zone. But when the door opens, it's not armed mercenaries who enter, it's Mrs. Henderson from the library, walking with the mechanical stiffness of someone operating under extreme duress. Her eyes are wide with terror, and the small device pressed against her neck explains her cooperation. A neural disruptor, probably set to deliver incapacitating voltage at the press of a button. "I'm sorry, Marian," Mrs. Henderson whispers, her voice breaking. "They said they'd hurt my grandchildren if I didn't." "Quiet, Patricia." The man from Thunderbird Coffee emerges from behind her, his hand controlling the device with casual precision. "Miss Scott and I have business to discuss." The tactical situation deteriorates instantly. Marian can't shoot without risking Patricia's life, can't retreat without abandoning an innocent woman, can't negotiate from a position of strength when civilians are being used as human shields. It's a textbook psychological warfare operation, designed to paralyze her decision-making by forcing impossible choices. "Let her go," Marian says, keeping the pistol trained on center mass despite knowing she can't use it. "This is between us." His smile is patient, almost paternal. "Everything is between us now. You made it between us when you stole property that doesn't belong to you." He guides Mrs. Henderson toward the couch with gentle pressure, the neural disruptor never leaving her neck. "Please put the gun down. We both know you're not going to shoot while Patricia might be harmed." She's trapped by her own conscience, and he knows it. Phoenix would have taken the shot, accepted collateral damage as an operational necessity. But Phoenix died in Beirut, and the woman who took her place can't sacrifice innocent lives to save her own skin. The cig goes down on the coffee table, safety engaged with deliberate precision. "Much better," he says, producing zip ties from his jacket. "Hands behind your back, if you please. Patricia's safety depends on your continued cooperation." The restraints bite into her wrists with familiar discomfort. She's been captured before, in places where interrogation was an art form and screaming was considered conversation. But those operations carried implicit rules, nation-state actors who had to answer to oversight committees and international law. Private contractors operate under different guidelines, especially when retrieving stolen assets. Mrs. Henderson's tears cut deeper than any physical torture could. The elderly librarian keeps apologizing, sobbing about her grandchildren and her pension, and how she never wanted to hurt anyone. Marian wants to tell her it's not her fault, that professionals manipulate good people by targeting their love for others. But the neural disruptor makes conversation dangerous for Patricia. "Transport is waiting downstairs," the man explains conversationally while checking her restraints. "We'll be taking a short drive to a location where we can discuss your situation more privately. Patricia will be released unharmed once you've fulfilled your obligations." The lie rolls off his tongue with practiced ease. Marian knows Patricia won't survive this operation, regardless of what happens next. Witnesses to kidnapping operations don't get released with apologies and cab fare home. But pointing this out would only increase Patricia's terror, while accomplishing nothing constructive. The building's hallway feels different now, longer, more exposed, filled with tactical disadvantages she's powerless to exploit. Her neighbors remain obliviously safe behind locked doors, protected by ignorance of the violence passing through their lives. The college kid's music still thumps through thin walls. Marcus probably sleeps through everything. Mrs. Chun's soap opera continues its melodramatic soundtrack, The van waiting outside matches Marian's expectations. Windowless rear compartment. Multiple occupants. Professional-grade communications equipment, visible through the open side door. 2 men in tactical gear flank the entrance, their positioning suggesting military backgrounds and current expertise in moving unwilling passengers. This is a well-funded operation, not some improvised kidnapping by amateurs. Mrs. Henderson stumbles. Getting into the van, her fear making coordination difficult. Marian catches her elbow to steady her, earning a nod of approval from their captor. Small kindnesses can build psychological dependencies that make hostages more manageable, but genuine compassion remains unchanged by tactical considerations. Drive takes 43 minutes through Detroit's industrial outskirts, past abandoned factories and vacant lots where the city's economic collapse left permanent scars. Marian counts turns and estimates distances while appearing defeated, building mental maps that might prove useful if escape opportunities present themselves. The zip ties are tight, but not circulation stopping, suggesting their captors want her functional for whatever comes next. The warehouse they enter fits every cliché of criminal hideouts. Corrugated metal walls, concrete floors stained with decades of automotive fluids, skylights that cast dramatic shadows across industrial debris. But the equipment filling the space is thoroughly modern computers, surveillance monitors, communication arrays that could coordinate operations across multiple continents. This isn't a temporary base. It's a functioning command center. Mrs. Henderson gets secured to a chair near the entrance, the neural disruptor replaced with conventional restraints, but the implicit threat unchanged. Her presence remains the psychological weapon keeping Marian cooperative, the conscience bomb that prevents violent solutions to tactical problems. "Welcome to our Detroit office," the man says, gesturing toward the high-tech setup with obvious pride. "We've been using this facility to coordinate your recovery operation for 6 months. Impressive what private contractors can accomplish when properly motivated, don't you think?" The revelation that they've been operating in her city for half a year feels like ice water in her veins. 6 months of surveillance, pattern analysis, relationship mapping. They know everything about her constructed life, probably have contingency plans for every possible response she might attempt. The scope of resources dedicated to her recovery suggests the stolen intelligence is worth significantly more than she estimated. "The Anubis files," he continues, naming the collection of documents she thought was buried beyond recovery. Operational records spanning 7 years of Blackwater's most sensitive contracts. Client lists, payment structures, classified mission. Parameters that certain parties would prefer remained confidential. "You took quite a comprehensive insurance policy when you decided to retire." She'd compiled the Anubis files over months of careful data gathering, building evidence of war crimes and constitutional violations that would destroy careers and topple governments if released publicly. The name came from the Egyptian god who weighed hearts against feathers, determining whether souls deserved eternal punishment. Appropriate for documents that could judge the damned. "The files are encrypted," she says, testing their technical knowledge. "Multiple layers, quantum-resistant algorithms. Even if you recovered them, accessing the contents would take years." His laugh carries genuine amusement. "We're not interested in breaking your encryption, Phoenix. We want you to decrypt them voluntarily, after which point the files will be returned to their rightful owners, and you'll be free to resume your quiet librarian fantasy." The offer sounds reasonable until she considers the implications. The Anubis files contain evidence of atrocities committed by people with unlimited resources and flexible morality. Their rightful owners won't risk that evidence surfacing later, which means she becomes a permanent liability the moment she provides access. Cooperating guarantees her death, while refusing it only delays the inevitable. Mrs. Henderson whimpers softly from her chair, drawing both their attention. The elderly woman has been following the conversation despite her terror, and understanding dawns in her eyes. She's beginning to realize that she's not a hostage in a ransom scheme, but witness to something that requires permanent silence. Patricia doesn't need to be here for this, Marian says, trying to inject authority into her voice despite the restraints. Let her go home to her grandchildren. She can't hurt you. Patricia is exactly where she needs to be, he replies, settling into a chair position to observe both women. Her presence ensures your cooperation, and her fate demonstrates the consequences of non-compliance. We're going to have a conversation about those files, and she's going to listen to every word. 2 more men emerge from the warehouse's shadows, confirming Marian's suspicion that the operation involves more personnel than initially visible. Both carry themselves with the disciplined movement of special operations veterans, their gear and positioning suggesting expertise in interrogation procedures. The psychological torture is about to escalate into physical persuasion. You have 1 hour to provide the encryption keys, the man announces, checking an expensive watch. After that, we demonstrate our commitment to recovering these files through alternative methods. Patricia's comfort will be our primary motivational tool. The threat hangs in the air like poison gas, contaminating everything it touches. Marian realizes she's facing the same impossible choice that destroyed Phoenix in Beirut: sacrifice innocent lives to protect operational security, or compromise the mission to save people who don't deserve to suffer for her decisions. But this time, she has something Phoenix never possessed in those final moments: the tattoo on her shoulder blade that no one has seen, carrying secrets even deeper than the Anubis files, secrets that might turn predators into prey if she can survive long enough to reveal them. The warehouse clock ticks toward an hour that will change everything, while Mrs. Henderson's quiet sobbing provides a soundtrack to approaching violence. Marian closes her eyes and begins preparing for the moment when hiding becomes impossible, when the ink on her skin will either save them both or mark their graves. The hour passes like a death march, each tick of the warehouse clock echoing through the vast space. Marian uses the time to study her captors, cataloging weaknesses and mapping escape routes with the systematic precision that kept Phoenix alive through 3 years of black operations. The 2 additional men maintain professional distance, but their positioning reveals training patterns military, probably Marines, with the kind of discipline that makes them dangerous but predictable. Mrs. Henderson has stopped crying, her fear crystallizing into the hollow-eyed acceptance of someone who understands her situation completely. The elderly librarian keeps glancing at Marian with an expression that cuts deeper than any physical torture could, forgiveness mixed with resignation, as if she's already pardoning the woman whose past has dragged her into this nightmare. "Time's up," the lead operative announces, rising from his chair with theatrical precision. "I hope you've used this hour to reconsider your position." He signals to one of his men, who approaches Mrs. Henderson with a canvas bag containing instruments that clink with metallic promise. "We'll start with something simple." Fingers are remarkably sensitive, and librarians need their dexterity. The psychological warfare's textbook perfect: threaten the innocent, make the target feel responsible for their suffering, break down resistance through guilt rather than pain. Marian has seen this technique applied in dozens of interrogations, knows how effectively it works on people who retain their humanity. But she's also learned something during 8 years of hiding that Phoenix never understood. Sometimes the best way to protect people is to stop protecting yourself. "Wait," she says, injecting defeat into her voice. "I'll give you the encryption keys." His smile is triumphant but cautious. "I thought you might see reason. However, we'll need to verify your cooperation before releasing Mrs. Henderson. The keys first, then we confirm access to the files." "The keys are useless without the context," Marian explains, allowing desperation to creep into her tone. "The files are fragmented across multiple servers, encrypted with cascading algorithms that require sequential unlocking. You need me to walk you through the process step by step. This is partially true. The Anubis files do require her personal involvement to decrypt, but she's buying time and maneuvering for position. The warehouse's layout offers limited options, but the computer array near the far wall might provide opportunities if she can get close enough to the terminals. Very well, he says, producing a laptop from the equipment stack. But Mrs. Henderson remains exactly where she is until we have complete access. Any attempts at sabotage will be taken out on her fingers, one joint at a time. The laptop boots to a secure desktop environment, its screen displaying the kind of custom interface that suggests significant technical sophistication. These aren't simple mercenaries. They're backed by an organization with resources that rival nation-states, possibly exceeding them in operational flexibility. The revelation makes her stolen intelligence even more valuable, and her situation correspondingly more dangerous. I need my hands free to work, she says, trying to sound defeated rather than calculating. Zip ties make it impossible to type accurately. One of the Marines approaches with a knife, cutting her restraints with practiced efficiency. Her wrists are raw from the plastic binding, but circulation returns quickly as she flexes her fingers. The small freedom feels enormous after hours of helplessness, even though she's still surrounded by armed professionals in an isolated warehouse. The laptop's keyboard feels foreign under her fingers after years of exclusively using library computers. But muscle memory guides her through the initial access procedures. She types slowly, deliberately, building the appearance of reluctant cooperation, while actually establishing connections to systems she hasn't accessed in 3 years. The primary server is in Montenegro, she explains, her voice carrying the flat tone of someone who's abandoned hope. Secondary backups in Iceland and New Zealand. The files are distributed across all 3 locations, requiring synchronized access to prevent automatic deletion protocols. This is true, as far as it goes. The Anubis files are indeed scattered across multiple continents, protected by security measures that would make government agencies envious. But what she doesn't mention is the 4th location, a server cluster in Dubai, that contains something far more dangerous than operational records. As she works, typing access codes and navigating security protocols, Marian positions herself carefully relative to the other computers in the array. The Marines have relaxed slightly, focused on the screens rather than her movements. Their commander watches the decryption process with the intensity of someone who staked his reputation on this operation's success. Fascinating, he murmurs, studying the data streams flowing across multiple monitors. 7 years of black operations, laid out like a corporate annual report. Client payments, operational parameters, casualty statistics, everything documented with bureaucratic precision. The files are revealing themselves exactly as designed, displaying layers of evidence that chronicle Blackwater's transformation from military contractor to private army. Names, dates, bank transfers, communication intercepts, enough documentation to destroy careers and topple governments if released to the right journalists. But these aren't the files that really matter. There's more, Marian says, allowing a note of calculation to enter her voice. The Anubis files were just the beginning. I kept digging after I disappeared, using the intelligence to map connections I couldn't see while I was inside the organization. His attention sharpens, predatory instincts recognizing the scent of bigger prey. What connections? She types a new set of commands, accessing servers that exist in legal gray zones and jurisdictional dead spaces. The screens begin displaying organizational charts that reveal the true scope of what she uncovered. Not just Blackwater's operations, but the network of corporations, government agencies, and private interests that fund and direct their activities. The Lazarus Network, she explains, naming the conspiracy for the first time. Blackwater is just one tentacle of something much larger. Private military companies, intelligence contractors, arms dealers, pharmaceutical giants, all coordinated through a single command structure that spans 6 continents. The revelation hits him like a physical blow. His face goes pale as he recognizes names on the organizational charts: politicians, CEOs, military leaders who officially have no connection to each other, but who appear linked through financial transfers and operational coordination. "That's impossible," he whispers, but his voice lacks conviction. The coordination required, the resources needed, the resources of people who profit from global instability. Marian continues, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she accesses deeper levels of the network. Wars aren't random chaos. They're manufactured conflicts designed to generate revenue for specific industries. The Lazarus Network doesn't just supply weapons to both sides. They create the conditions that make conflict inevitable. Mrs. Henderson has stopped whimpering, her librarian's instincts recognizing the historical significance of what she's witnessing. The documents scrolling across the screens represent the kind of evidence that historians dream of finding: primary source material that exposes the hidden mechanisms of power. But Marian's real purpose isn't education, it's positioning. While her captors focus on the revelations unfolding before them, she's been subtly maneuvering closer to the warehouse's electrical systems. The computer array draws massive amounts of power, routed through junction boxes that would create spectacular failures if overloaded correctly. The network has been active for 15 years, she continues, accessing files that make her previous intelligence look insignificant. Coordinated interventions in 47 countries, generating over $300 billion in revenue while destabilizing entire regions. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen — none of those conflicts were organic political movements. The lead operative's phone buzzes with an incoming call. He answers without looking away from the screens, his voice tight with stress. "Yes, sir, we have the files. But there's more. She's found something else. The Lazarus Network." The conversation that follows is brief but telling. Orders delivered in clipped, urgent tones. A timeline accelerated beyond comfortable margins. Resources being repositioned to contain a situation that's expanded beyond original parameters. "Change of plans," he announces, ending the call. "We're moving to immediate extraction." The files get copied to portable drives, and both women come with us for extended debriefing. This is the moment Marian has been maneuvering toward. The revelation of the Lazarus Network has shifted the operation's priorities, creating confusion and urgency that can be exploited. More importantly, it's drawn their attention away from her physical positioning and toward the intelligence she's revealing. She reaches behind her back, fingers finding the collar of her shirt, and makes a decision. That will change everything. With a sharp tug, she tears the fabric across her shoulder blades, exposing the tattoo that's been hidden for 8 years. The effect is immediate and electric. One of the Marines sees the ink first, his eyes widening with recognition before he takes an involuntary step backward. "Holy shit," he whispers, his voice carrying the kind of awe reserved for legends that turn out to be real. "You're Phoenix." But the tattoo on her shoulder blade isn't just the stylized bird that gave her the operational code name. It's a masterpiece of symbolic communication, incorporating elements that identify her as something far more significant than a rogue operative. The wings spread across her shoulder blades in intricate detail, but woven into the design are symbols that mark her as a founding member of the Lazarus Network's most secret division. She wasn't just Phoenix the assassin. She was Phoenix the architect, one of the original planners who helped design the network's operational structure. The tattoo is her membership card to an organization so secret that most of its members don't know it exists. The Prometheus Division, she says, turning to face them with the ink fully visible. "I didn't steal the Anubis files, I created them. I built the Lazarus Network from the ground up, and I can bring it all down with a single phone call." The warehouse falls silent, except for the hum of computers and Mrs. Henderson's sharp intake of breath. 3 armed professionals who minutes ago held absolute power now stare at a woman whose tattoo marks her as their superior in an organization that doesn't officially exist. The hunter has become the prey, but the prey has revealed herself to be the apex predator. The game has changed completely, and Marian Scott, librarian, is about to remind everyone present why Phoenix was the most feared operative in the shadow world. The quiet life is over. The real war is about to begin. The silence stretches for exactly 17 seconds before the lead operative's training overrides his shock. His hand moves toward his weapon, but freezes when Marian raises a single finger in warning. "I wouldn't," she says, her voice carrying an authority that 8 years of hiding couldn't completely erase. The Prometheus division operates under very specific protocols. Harming a founding member without proper authorization triggers automatic retaliation that your employers really don't want to experience. The Marine who first recognized her tattoo has gone pale, understanding implications that his commander is still processing. "Sir," he says quietly, "if she's really Prometheus, then we're not authorized for this operation." The briefing never mentioned. The briefing was compartmentalized, the commander snaps, but uncertainty creeps into his voice. Need-to-know basis. He studies Marian with new wariness, calculating odds that have shifted dramatically in the past 30 seconds. Prometheus division was disbanded after Beirut. The records show all members eliminated or disappeared. Marian's laugh carries the bitter edge of someone who's watched friends die for bureaucratic convenience. The records show what they were designed to show. Prometheus wasn't disbanded, it was restructured. We went deeper underground when the network's existence became too visible. She moves slowly toward the computer array, noting how the Marines track her movement, but don't intervene. The Beirut bombing wasn't an assassination attempt, it was a graduation ceremony. The revelation reframes everything they think they know about her disappearance. Prometheus division members don't retire. They ascend to positions where they can guide the network's evolution from shadows, so deep that most operatives never suspect their existence. Her death in Beirut wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of her real career. "Prove it," the commander demands, but his voice lacks conviction. The tattoo is proof enough for anyone who knows what to look for, but admitting that would mean acknowledging operational parameters far beyond his clearance level. Marian turns to the laptop, fingers dancing across keys with renewed confidence. Instead of accessing the Anubis files, she navigates to a completely different system, one that exists in the spaces between official networks, protected by security measures that make government encryption look primitive. The screens fill with data streams that make the previous revelations look like amateur hour. Real-time operational feeds from 6 continents, showing Lazarus network activities in progress across the globe. Armed shipments moving through the Suez Canal, currency transfers flowing between shell corporations in the Cayman Islands, mercenary deployments coordinated through encrypted satellite networks. The network never sleeps, she explains, highlighting connections that span industries and governments. Right now, there are 47 active operations generating revenue, while destabilizing targeted regions. The Syrian conflict? We're supplying weapons to 3 different factions while providing reconstruction contracts to companies we own. Yemen, Somalia, Myanmar. Every crisis has our fingerprints, because crisis is our business model. Mrs. Henderson watches the displays with the horrified fascination of someone witnessing history's hidden machinery. Her librarian's mind catalogs the implications of what she's seeing: decades of archived materials, suddenly recontextualized as evidence of orchestrated chaos. The commander's phone erupts with incoming calls that he doesn't dare answer. His superiors are undoubtedly receiving updates about the operation's unexpected complications, recalculating risk assessments as they realize they're not extracting A rogue operative, but potentially antagonizing a shadow government architect. The beautiful thing about Prometheus Division, Marian continues, is plausible deniability. We operate with complete autonomy, answerable only to the network's core objectives. No chains of command, no oversight committees, no political interference. Pure operational efficiency. She pauses, letting the implications sink in. Which means I can authorize terminal sanctions against anyone who threatens network security. The warehouse's atmosphere shifts palpably as three armed professionals realize they're no longer in control of the situation. The woman they captured as a fugitive librarian has revealed herself as someone who can order their deaths with the same casual authority most people use to request coffee. But Marian's real strategy goes deeper than intimidation. While demonstrating her Prometheus credentials, she's been systematically accessing the warehouse's security systems. The facility's impressive technical capabilities include surveillance networks that extend far beyond the building itself, cameras and sensors that monitor approaches, communications that coordinate with external teams, defensive measures that can be turned inward with the right commands. There's something you need to understand about this operation, she says, her fingers continuing their work while maintaining eye contact with the commander. Your employers didn't hire you to extract stolen intelligence. They hired you to eliminate loose ends that threaten network stability. I was never supposed to survive this encounter. The commander's expression confirms her assessment before he can mask it. The operation was designed as assassination disguised as asset recovery. With her death attributed to resistance during capture, Mrs. Henderson's presence wasn't psychological leverage, it was additional collateral damage to sell the story of a desperate fugitive who fought back too hard. But here's what they didn't anticipate, Marian continues, accessing deeper levels of the warehouse's systems. Prometheus Division members don't just disappear. We evolve. 8 years of hiding wasn't retirement, it was reconnaissance. I've been mapping the network's vulnerabilities, identifying pressure points, preparing for exactly this scenario. The screens around them begin displaying new information, not network operations, but network weaknesses. Financial irregularities that could trigger international investigations. Communication intercepts that reveal connections between legitimate businesses and shadow operations. Personnel files that document war crimes committed by people who officially don't exist. The Damocles Protocol, she explains, naming the contingency plan she spent years developing. Every Prometheus member maintains insurance policies that activate upon their death or capture. Distributed deadman switches that release carefully curated intelligence packages to journalists, prosecutors, and rival organizations simultaneously. The commander's face goes ashen as he realizes the scope of what she's describing. The network's greatest strength, its interconnected nature, becomes its greatest vulnerability when someone with architectural knowledge decides to bring it down. A coordinated intelligence release could trigger investigations that span decades and continents. You're bluffing, he says, but his voice wavers with uncertainty. The network has safeguards against exactly this scenario. The network has safeguards against external threats, Marian corrects. Prometheus Division exists specifically because internal threats require different countermeasures. We're the immune system that prevents the body from destroying itself. She turns from the computers to face him directly. But sometimes the immune system recognizes that the body has become cancerous. Mrs. Henderson speaks for the first time in hours, her voice barely above a whisper. How many people have died because of this network? The question hangs in the air like an indictment. Marian doesn't answer immediately, calculating numbers that exist in classified reports and mass graves across the globe. The network's operations generate wealth by creating demand for their services, weapons, private security, reconstruction contracts, refugee management. Every conflict they orchestrate produces corpses counted in statistics that never mention corporate profit margins. Too many, she finally admits. Which is why I've spent 8 years preparing to end it. The commander's radio crackles with urgent communications from his backup teams. External surveillance has detected unexpected activity around the warehouse, vehicles moving into position, personnel deploying to defensive locations. But these aren't law enforcement or rival operatives. The movement pattern suggests network assets responding to a Prometheus-level security alert. Your employers are cutting their losses, Marian observes, monitoring the communications through hacked channels. Standard protocol: when a Prometheus operation goes sideways, eliminate all witnesses and blame it on external interference. Those teams surrounding us aren't here for extraction. They're here for cleanup. The Marines exchange glances that confirm what they're all beginning to understand. They've become liabilities in an operation that's spiraled beyond acceptable parameters. The network doesn't tolerate loose ends, especially ones with knowledge of Prometheus division activities. So what do you propose? The commander asks, his tactical training warring with the realization that his employers plan to eliminate him along with his targets. Marian's smile carries the cold calculation of someone who's orchestrated operations across continents. We give them exactly what they expect: a warehouse full of corpses and destroyed evidence. The only question is whether those corpses include us or the cleanup teams they're sending. She returns to the computer array, fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she accesses the warehouse's defensive systems. The facility was designed as a secure command center, which means it contains more than just surveillance equipment. Hidden throughout the building are automated defensive measures designed to repel assault teams and protect sensitive materials. Mrs. Henderson, she says without turning around, I need you to move to the far corner behind those shipping containers. What's about to happen will be loud and dangerous, but staying here is more dangerous. The elderly librarian moves with surprising speed, her survival instincts overriding the shock of everything she's witnessed. As she reaches the relative safety of the containers, Marian activates systems that transform the warehouse from command center to fortress. Steel barriers slide down over windows and entrances. Automated weapon systems emerge from concealed positions, their targeting lasers painting red dots across potential approach routes. The computer array enters lockdown mode, encrypting hard drives while preparing incendiary charges that will destroy evidence if the position becomes untenable. Gentlemen, Marian announces, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's planned operations in war zones. Welcome to asymmetric warfare. We have superior position, overwhelming firepower, and complete tactical surprise. The question is whether you're smart enough to help me use these advantages, or whether you prefer to trust the people who just marked you for termination. The warehouse's external speakers crackle to life, broadcasting her voice to the approaching teams. This is Prometheus 7 declaring autonomous operations under network security protocols. All external assets are to withdraw immediately or face terminal sanctions. The response comes in the form of small arms fire against the armored barriers, confirming that the cleanup teams either don't believe her credentials or have orders that supersede Prometheus authority. Either way, the shooting war has officially begun. Marian Scott, librarian, has finally stopped hiding. Phoenix is rising from 8 years of ashes, and the Lazarus Network is about to learn why Prometheus division members don't simply retire, they evolve into nightmares that hunt their former masters. The first breach attempt comes through the loading dock at exactly 3:47 a.m., time to exploit the psychological vulnerability of exhausted defenders. But Marian anticipated this. She's orchestrated similar operations in Prague, Mogadishu, and Jakarta, understanding how assault teams think because she helped train their predecessors. The warehouse's automated defenses respond with mechanical precision. Motion sensors trigger floodlights that turn the approach into a killing field, while concealed machine gun nests open fire with overlapping fields of devastation. The cleanup team's point man drops immediately, His tactical gear no match for military-grade ammunition delivered at close range. Jesus Christ, one of the Marines whispers, watching the carnage through surveillance monitors. Those are our people out there. We're your people, Marian corrects, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards as she coordinates defensive systems with the fluid expertise of someone who's fought proxy wars on 3 continents. The moment they accepted termination orders against network assets, they became acceptable casualties. The commander, she's learned his name is Colonel Mason, through intercepted communications, stares at the tactical displays with growing comprehension. How long have you been planning this? 8 years, 4 months, 13 days, she responds without hesitation. Since the morning I realized the network had evolved beyond its original mission parameters and become a cancer that feeds on global instability. She highlights movement patterns on the surveillance grid, showing how the assault teams are repositioning for a coordinated attack. The Damocles Protocol isn't just insurance, it's surgery. Mrs. Henderson emerges from behind the shipping containers, her librarian's curiosity overriding survival instincts as she observes the tactical coordination unfolding around her. You've been planning to destroy your own organization for 8 years? Not destroy, Marian clarifies, redirecting automated turrets to track new movement signatures. Reform. The network's core concept, coordinated global operations for strategic objectives, remains sound. But it's been corrupted by people who value profit over purpose, who've forgotten that power exists to serve something greater than itself. The second breach attempt targets the building's electrical systems, using shaped charges to disable the generator complex that powers the defensive grid. But Marian anticipated this approach: 2 backup power sources hidden throughout the facility. Maintain critical systems while decoy generators create the illusion of vulnerability. Prometheus division exists because the network needs internal regulation, she explains, watching assault teams advance toward what they believe are disabled defenses. We're the mechanism that prevents the organization from becoming the very thing it was designed to oppose. The trap springs with brutal efficiency. Hidden charges detonate beneath the advancing teams, while backup weapon systems emerge from positions the attackers thought were neutralized. The warehouse transforms into a geometric maze of crossfire and kill zones, each avenue of approach covered by multiple overlapping threat vectors. Mason's radio crackles with increasingly desperate communications from the surviving assault elements. Bravo team is down, Charlie team is pinned, requesting immediate extraction. But no extraction is coming. The network doesn't waste resources on failed operations, especially ones that expose operational security to unwanted scrutiny. Your former employers are very predictable, Marian observes, analyzing communication intercepts that reveal the assault team's desperation. They'll attempt one more coordinated push, probably through the skylight, then withdraw and blame the operations failure on intelligence deficiencies. But instead of the expected assault, the communication patterns shift to something unexpected. New voices on the tactical frequencies, speaking with accents that suggest Eastern European origins. The surveillance cameras reveal vehicles approaching from directions that weren't part of the original assault plan. That's not network protocol, Mason says, studying the tactical displays with professional interest. Those are external assets. Marian's expression hardens as she recognizes the operational signatures. Bratva, she says, naming the Russian organized crime syndicate with a voice that carries old grudges. The network has been courting them as potential partners in Eastern European operations. Apparently, they've decided this is an excellent field test. The arrival of Russian mob enforcers transforms the tactical situation from siege to 3-way battle. The Bratva teams move with different patterns than military-trained assault groups, using civilian vehicles and urban warfare tactics that suggest extensive experience in city fighting. Their objectives aren't extraction or evidence recovery. They're here to eliminate everyone and claim the warehouse's intelligence assets for their own use. How many enemies do you people have? Mrs. Henderson asks, her voice carrying the strained humor of someone who's processed more violence in 12 hours than most people experience in a lifetime. The network operates globally, Marian replies, redirecting surveillance systems to track the new threat vectors. We've made enemies of everyone who profits from chaos we didn't orchestrate ourselves. Half the world's criminal organizations would love to acquire our operational intelligence. The warehouse's defensive systems weren't designed for multi-vector threats, and Marian realizes she needs to adapt tactics in real time. The automated weapons are devastating against conventional assault teams, but the Bratva fighters use human shields and civilian vehicles that complicate targeting parameters. Mason, she says, turning to the colonel with an expression that suggests reluctant partnership. Your men have training in urban combat scenarios. I can give you access to manual weapon controls if you're willing to help defend this position. The colonel considers the offer for exactly 3 seconds before nodding. My team signed up to serve their country, not to be eliminated by corporate cleanup crews. What do you need? The transition from captives to allies happens with the fluid efficiency of professionals recognizing changed circumstances. The Marines take control of defensive positions while Marian coordinates overall strategy, their military training integrating seamlessly with her architectural knowledge of the facility's capabilities. The first Bratva probe comes through the northwest corner, using stolen city maintenance vehicles to approach under cover of legitimate municipal activity. But Marian's surveillance network extends throughout Detroit's industrial district, providing early warning that allows defensive systems to engage before the attackers reach effective range. They're testing our response patterns, Mason observes, watching how the Russian teams withdraw after minimal contact. Professional reconnaissance, which means they'll adapt their approach based on what they've learned. Marian agrees, analyzing the tactical data streams flowing across multiple monitors. But we have advantages they don't anticipate. She activates systems that go beyond conventional warehouse security industrial equipment, repurposed for defensive use. Chemical storage tanks that can be weaponized through controlled ruptures. Crane systems that transform into siege engines, capable of dropping shipping containers on assault teams. The warehouse becomes a fortress engineered by someone who understands both conventional warfare and industrial sabotage. Every piece of equipment serves dual purposes. Every defensive measure conceals additional surprises. Every apparent weakness masks carefully prepared traps. Mrs. Henderson has found a laptop computer and begun documenting everything she's witnessed. Her historian's instincts recognizing the importance of preserving evidence of events that will never appear in official records. Someone needs to tell this story, she explains when Marian notices her typing. People deserve to know what's being done in their name. The documentation project serves practical purposes beyond historical preservation. As a librarian, Mrs. Henderson has expertise in information organization that proves valuable for cataloging the intelligence streams flowing through the warehouse's systems. Her civilian perspective helps identify patterns that trained operatives might overlook. The financial transfers, she says, highlighting connections between seemingly unrelated transactions. These payment schedules correspond to election cycles in 17 different countries. They're not just profiting from chaos, they're creating it according to political calendars. The revelation adds another layer to Marian's understanding of the network's evolution. What began as opportunistic military contracting has become systematic manipulation of democratic processes, with conflicts timed to influence electoral outcomes and policy decisions. The Bratva's main assault begins at dawn, coordinated with the surviving network cleanup teams in a temporary alliance born of mutual opportunism. Both groups want the warehouse's intelligence assets, but they're willing to cooperate long enough to eliminate its defenders before turning on each other. Incoming! Mason shouts as rocket-propelled grenades streak toward the building's reinforced walls. The warehouse shudders under the impact, but the structural modifications Marian implemented hold against the barrage. Counter-battery fire from hidden positions responds immediately, targeting the assault team's heavy weapons with precision strikes that demonstrate the facility's true defensive capabilities. The warehouse isn't just a command center, it's a fortified position, designed to withstand siege warfare. But Marian knows that static defense eventually fails against determined attackers with superior numbers. The time has come to implement the final phase of the Damocles Protocol, the element she's hoped to avoid because it requires sacrifices that even Prometheus Division operators find difficult to accept. "Mrs. Henderson," she says, her voice carrying the weight of decisions that will reshape the shadow world, "I need you to send that documentation to every contact in your library network. Everything you've recorded, transmitted to as many academic institutions as possible." The elderly librarian's fingers fly across the keyboard with surprising speed, uploading files to university servers, historical societies, and research institutions across the globe. The evidence of the Lazarus Network's operations begins spreading through academic channels that no military or corporate force can completely suppress. Phase 7 initiated, Marian announces into the warehouse's communication system, knowing the words will be intercepted by multiple intelligence agencies monitoring the frequencies. Network core systems are now compromised. All assets should assume operational security is permanently breached. The declaration transforms a local tactical situation into a global intelligence crisis. Every Lazarus Network operation worldwide becomes potentially exposed. Every asset potentially compromised. Every safe house potentially under surveillance. The shadow war that's existed in darkness for 15 years suddenly faces the prospect of public scrutiny. The siege of the warehouse has become something far more significant, the opening battle in a war that will determine whether shadow governments can survive the daylight. The warehouse falls into a silence, so complete that even the hum of the electrical system seems deafening. 3 armed professionals who moments ago held absolute power now stare at a woman whose tattoo has just rewritten every assumption they held about their operation. The ink across Marian's shoulder blades isn't just the stylized phoenix that gave her the operational code name. Woven into the intricate featherwork are symbols that tell a different story. Entirely geometric patterns that identify her as a founding architect of the very network they serve. Hieroglyphic elements that mark her as someone who doesn't just know where the bodies are buried, but who designed the cemetery. "The Prometheus Division," she says, her voice carrying an authority that 8 years of hiding couldn't completely erase. "I didn't steal the Anubis files from Blackwater International. I created them. I built the intelligence network you're trying to protect, and I can bring it all down with a single phone call." The lead operative, she can see his name tag now, reads Torres, takes an involuntary step backward. His training wars with recognition, professional protocol colliding with the reality that he's just threatened someone who technically outranks everyone in his chain of command. "Prometheus Division was disbanded after Beirut," he says, but his voice lacks conviction. "All members eliminated or disappeared." Marian's laugh carries the bitter edge of someone who's watched friends die for bureaucratic convenience. The records show what they were designed to show. "We didn't disband, we evolved." The Beirut bombing wasn't an assassination attempt, it was graduation. She moves slowly toward the computer array, noting how the 3 men track her movement. "But don't interfere." The Marines Rodriguez and Chun, according to their gear, have gone pale as they begin to understand the implications of her revelation. 8 years ago, the network I helped build started metastasizing beyond its original mission parameters. Marian continues, her fingers finding familiar rhythms on the keyboard. Instead of providing strategic stability through controlled operations, it became a profit engine that manufactured chaos to generate revenue. Prometheus Division exists specifically to perform internal regulation when the network threatens to destroy itself. The screens around them fill with data streams that make her previous revelations look primitive. Real-time operational feeds from 6 continents, showing Lazarus network activities in progress across the globe. Arms shipments moving through the Suez Canal under diplomatic cover. Currency transfers flowing between shell corporations and jurisdictions that don't ask questions. Mercenary deployments coordinated through encrypted satellite networks that officially don't exist. The beautiful thing about being a founding architect, she explains, accessing systems with the casual authority of someone who helped design them, is that no one can lock you out of your own creation. Every security protocol, every firewall, every dead man switch, I helped write the code. Mrs. Henderson has stopped whimpering, her librarian's instincts recognizing the historical significance of what she's witnessing despite her terror. The documents flowing across the screens represent evidence that would rewrite modern history if it ever reached academic institutions. Torres's phone erupts with incoming calls that he doesn't dare answer. His superiors are undoubtedly receiving alerts about the operation's unexpected complications, recalculating risk assessments as they realize they're not extracting a rogue operative, but potentially antagonizing the network's immune system. Here's what's going to happen, Marian says, her voice carrying the cold calculation of someone who's orchestrated operations across continents. You're going to release Mrs. Henderson immediately. She's going to walk out of here with a memory card containing enough evidence to keep investigative journalists busy for decades. And you're going to help me send a message to our mutual employers about the consequences of trying to eliminate Prometheus assets. We can't just, Rodriguez begins, but stops when Chun grabs his arm. Sir, Chun says quietly, his eyes fixed on the tattoo's intricate details. The briefing mentioned Prometheus protocols. If she's really one of them, we're not authorized for direct action without council approval. The council. Marian hadn't heard that term used in operational context for 3 years, but its mention confirms that the network's power structure has evolved in her absence. The original 7-member oversight body has apparently expanded its authority, which explains how operations like this could be authorized without Prometheus consultation. The council doesn't know I'm alive, she says, turning from the computers to face Torres directly. My death in Beirut was so convincing that they struck me from all active rosters, which means this operation was launched without proper authorization, making all of you liable for actions taken against network assets. The warehouse's atmosphere shifts palpably as 3 armed professionals realize they've been manipulated into a situation that could end their careers or their lives. Network protocol is absolute when it comes to internal security. Unauthorized actions against senior assets carry terminal penalties. But here's what they didn't tell you in the briefing, Marian continues, her fingers never stopping their work. On the keyboards, Prometheus Division doesn't just regulate network operations. We design contingency plans for scenarios where the network itself becomes the threat. The screens begin displaying new information, not operational intelligence, but architectural weaknesses, financial irregularities that could trigger international investigations, communication intercepts that reveal connections between legitimate governments and shadow operations, personnel files that document war crimes committed by people who officially don't exist. The Damocles Protocol, she explains, naming the contingency plan she spent 8 years developing. Every Prometheus member maintains insurance policies that activate upon unauthorized actions against network assets. Dead man switches that release carefully curated intelligence packages to rival organizations, media outlets, and law enforcement agencies simultaneously. Mrs. Henderson speaks for the first time since the revelation began, her voice barely above a whisper. How many people have died because of this network? The question hangs in the air like an indictment. Marian doesn't answer immediately, calculating numbers that exist in classified reports and mass graves across the globe. The network's operations generate wealth by creating demand for their services. Every conflict they orchestrate produces corpses counted in statistics that never mention corporate profit margins. Too many, she finally admits. Which is why Prometheus Division exists, and why I've spent 8 years preparing to remind the Council that some things are more important than quarterly revenue reports. Torres's radio crackles with urgent communications from backup teams positioned around the warehouse. But instead of extraction orders, the messages carry a different tone: confusion, concern, requests for clarification about operational parameters that have suddenly become unclear. Your employers are cutting their losses, Marian observes, monitoring the communications through systems she helped design. Standard protocol when a Prometheus operation goes sideways: withdraw assets and blame operational failure on intelligence deficiencies. But the radio traffic suggests something more complicated is happening. External surveillance has detected unexpected movement around the warehouse vehicles that don't match network protocols, personnel deploying with tactical signatures that suggest different organizational training. We have a problem, Chun announces, studying the surveillance feeds with professional alarm. Those aren't our people surrounding the building. Marian's expression hardens as she recognizes the operational patterns displayed on the monitors. Bratva, she says, naming the Russian organized crime syndicate with a voice that carries old grudges. The network has been negotiating partnerships with Eastern European organizations. Apparently, someone decided this would be an excellent field test. The arrival of Russian mob enforcers transforms the situation from internal network discipline to three-way conflict. The warehouse contains intelligence that multiple organizations would kill to possess, and Marian realizes that her revelation has attracted attention from players who don't recognize network authority. So what do you propose? Torres asks, his tactical training overriding protocol concerns, as he recognizes that survival has become the immediate priority. Marian's smile carries the cold calculation of someone who's planned for contingencies. Within contingencies, we give them exactly what they expect: a warehouse full of corpses and destroyed evidence. The only question is whether those corpses include us or the people trying to eliminate us. She returns to the computer array, accessing systems that transform the warehouse from simple storage facility to fortress. Steel barriers slide down over windows and entrances. Automated defensive systems emerge from concealed positions throughout the building. The computers enter lockdown mode, preparing to destroy sensitive data if the position becomes untenable. Mrs. Henderson, she says without turning around, I need you to move to the reinforced section behind those shipping containers. What's about to happen will be loud and dangerous. The elderly librarian moves with surprising speed, her survival instincts finally overriding shock. As she reaches relative safety, Marian activates the final defensive protocol systems that exist specifically for scenarios where Prometheus assets face elimination attempts. Gentlemen, she announces, her voice carrying the authority of someone who survived wars that officially never happened. Welcome to asymmetric warfare. We have superior position, overwhelming firepower, and complete tactical surprise. The question is whether you're smart enough to help me use these advantages. The warehouse's external speakers crackle to life, broadcasting her voice to the approaching teams. This is Prometheus 7 declaring autonomous operations under network security protocols. All external assets are to withdraw immediately or face terminal sanctions. The response comes in the form of small arms fire against the armored barriers, confirming that the cleanup teams either don't believe her credentials or have orders that supersede Prometheus authority. Torres looks at his men, then back at Marian, making the calculation that will determine whether they live through the next hour. What do you need us to do? Marian Scott, librarian, has finally stopped hiding. Phoenix is rising from 8 years of ashes, and everyone who thought they could eliminate her is about to learn why Prometheus Division members don't simply retire. They evolve into the nightmares that hunt their former masters. The siege is about to begin, and this time, she's not running. The first explosion comes at 4:23 a.m., shattering the pre-dawn silence with a percussion that rattles every piece of equipment in the warehouse. Marian's fingers fly across multiple keyboards, cycling through surveillance feeds that reveal the scope of what they're facing. 27 attackers in total, 12 from the original network cleanup crew. 15 Bratva enforcers who've arrived in stolen municipal vehicles and civilian cars. They're coordinating, Torres observes, studying the tactical displays with professional interest. Network teams taking the north approach, Russians coming from the south. They'll converge simultaneously to overwhelm our defensive positions. But Marian anticipated this strategy. The warehouse isn't just fortified, it's designed as a tactical maze where superior numbers become a liability. She activates systems that flood specific zones with industrial chemicals, creating kill corridors where attackers must advance single file through environments that favor defenders. Rodriguez, take position 3, she commands, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's orchestrated urban warfare across 3 continents. Chun, I need you on the automated systems. Your job is to make sure our weapons don't run out of ammunition before theirs do. The Marines move with professional efficiency, their training integrating seamlessly with her strategic coordination. Within minutes, they've transformed from captors to combat partners, united by the immediate necessity of survival against overwhelming odds. Mrs. Henderson has found a secure position behind reinforced shipping containers, but instead of cowering, she's documenting everything through a tablet camera. Someone needs to record this, she explains when Marian notices her filming. If we don't survive, at least there will be evidence of what happened here. The second wave of attacks comes simultaneously from multiple vectors, rocket-propelled. Grenades against the reinforced walls, small arms fire suppressing the automated defenses, and something unexpected that makes Marian's blood run cold. Thermal imagery reveals figures rappelling from helicopters onto the warehouse roof, their movement signatures suggesting special operations training that exceeds both network and Bratva capabilities. We have a third player, she announces, highlighting the aerial insertion on the main displays. Those aren't mob enforcers or corporate cleanup crews. Someone called in professionals. Torres studies the new threat vectors with growing alarm. Equipment signatures suggest Spetsnaz or equivalent. Russian military special forces, not organized crime. The revelation transforms their tactical situation from manageable to desperate. Fighting network contractors and organized crime enforcers was within their capabilities, but military special forces with aerial insertion capabilities represent a threat level that their improvised defenses weren't designed to handle. They want the intelligence badly enough to risk international incident, Marian realizes, her mind racing through implications that extend far beyond their immediate survival. This isn't about eliminating loose ends anymore. Someone's decided that the Prometheus Division's knowledge base is worth starting a shadow war. The roof-inserted team begins their assault with military precision, using shaped charges to breach the warehouse's upper level, while coordinated ground forces maintain pressure on the perimeter defenses. But Marian's architectural knowledge extends to vertical threats as well-hidden defensive systems activate throughout the building's ceiling structure. Explosive charges concealed in the roof supports detonate in sequence, creating controlled collapses that funnel the assault team into predetermined kill zones. The warehouse's interior transforms into a 3-dimensional battlefield, where every level offers different tactical advantages to defenders who know the terrain. Jesus, Chun breathes, watching enemy personnel signatures disappear from thermal imaging as the roof traps spring with lethal efficiency. How long did you spend preparing this place? 8 years of paranoid contingency planning, Marian replies, redirecting automated weapons to track surviving assault team members who've adapted to the changed environment. Prometheus division exists because sometimes the network's enemies include the network itself. But the professional assault teams adapt faster than civilian contractors or organized crime enforcers. Within minutes, they've reorganized their approach, using military engineering equipment to create new breach points, while suppressing defensive systems with coordinated fire patterns that suggest extensive training against fortified positions. Warehouse shudders under sustained assault, its defensive systems beginning to show stress fractures under the coordinated attack. Marian realizes that static defense against professional military forces is ultimately unsustainable. They need to shift tactics from fortress warfare to something more dynamic. Torres, how familiar are your men with urban combat scenarios? She asks, accessing schematic displays that show the warehouse's connection to Detroit's underground infrastructure. Extensive training in Iraq and Afghanistan, he replies, understanding immediately where her strategic thinking is heading. You want to take the fight mobile. The warehouse was never meant to be our final position, Marian explains, activating systems that will transform their fortress into a massive diversion. It's bait designed to draw multiple enemies into a confined space where they'll eliminate each other while we escape through routes they don't know exist. The revelation that their defensive stand was actually an elaborate trap reshapes everyone's understanding of the situation. Mrs. Henderson's documentation project suddenly seems less like desperate recording and more like strategic intelligence, gathering for operations that extend beyond their immediate survival. The steam tunnels, Rodriguez realizes, studying the schematic displays. Detroit's old underground heating system connects to dozens of buildings across the industrial district. Marian's smile carries predatory satisfaction. Exactly. While our enemies fight over an empty warehouse full of booby traps, we'll be repositioning to phase 2 of the operation. But their escape window is narrowing rapidly. External surveillance shows additional vehicles approaching from multiple directions, more network assets, additional Bratva reinforcements, and ominously, unmarked vans that suggest federal law enforcement has finally detected the small war erupting in Detroit's industrial district. FBI, Torres identifies, recognizing the tactical signatures, probably responding to reports of automatic weapons fire and explosions. This is about to become a federal incident. The arrival of legitimate law enforcement complicates their tactical situation exponentially. Network and criminal organizations might be willing to eliminate witnesses, but engaging federal agents would trigger responses that even shadow governments prefer to avoid. Time to leave, Marian announces, initiating the warehouse's final defensive protocol. Mrs. Henderson, you're coming with us. Rodriguez, Chun grabbed the portable drives containing the Prometheus archives. We'll need that intelligence for phase 2. The escape route leads through maintenance tunnels that connect to Detroit's abandoned subway system, passages that exist on no official maps but which Marian has spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. Steam pipes provide cover, while underground electrical systems offer power for communication equipment that will coordinate their next moves. As they prepare to evacuate, the warehouse's automated systems begin implementing scorched earth protocols. Incendiary charges will destroy sensitive equipment, while explosive devices create the impression of catastrophic structural failure. The attacking forces will find wreckage and corpses decoy bodies that Marian positioned years ago in preparation for this contingency. The beautiful thing about faking your death twice, she explains, leading them toward concealed tunnel entrances, is that people stop looking for you after the first time. But as they reach the evacuation point, Mrs. Henderson makes an unexpected decision. Instead of following them into the tunnels, she turns back toward the warehouse's communication array. I need to upload the documentation, she says, her voice carrying determination that surprises everyone. This evidence needs to reach academic institutions before the warehouse is destroyed. Patricia, there's no time, Marian begins. But the elderly librarian, is already moving back toward the computer systems with surprising speed. "You spent 8 years preparing to expose this network," Mrs. Henderson calls over her shoulder. "I'm not letting that preparation be wasted because we were afraid to take risks." The decision forces a tactical choice that Marian doesn't want to make. Mrs. Henderson's documentation represents evidence that could expose the Lazarus network to public scrutiny, but retrieving it requires delaying their escape while professional assault teams close in on their position. "Cover her," Marian orders Torres and his men, making the command decision that strategic objectives outweigh personal safety. 2 minutes, then we extract whether she's finished or not. Mrs. Henderson's fingers fly across the keyboard with the speed of someone who spent decades organizing information under pressure. Academic databases, university servers, historical societies. The documentation streams out through encrypted channels to institutions across the globe. The upload completes with 30 seconds to spare, just as thermal imaging shows assault teams breaching the warehouse's inner perimeter. Mrs. Henderson grabs the portable drives containing additional evidence, following them into the steam tunnels. As explosive charges begin detonating throughout the facility above, the underground escape route leads through forgotten infrastructure that spans Detroit's industrial heartland. Steam pipes provide concealment, while abandoned electrical conduits offer power for portable communication equipment. Within minutes, they've covered enough distance to emerge 3 miles from the warehouse, surfacing through a utility access point in an abandoned factory district. Behind them, the warehouse burns with fires visible from downtown Detroit. Emergency services respond with sirens and flashing lights, while news helicopters circle overhead, broadcasting images of what appears to be an industrial accident. The cover story is already working, another example of Detroit's economic decline. Not evidence of shadow wars fought in abandoned buildings, but Marian knows their enemies won't be fooled by theatrical destruction. Professional intelligence services will analyze the wreckage, identify the sophisticated defensive systems, and realize that someone with extensive resources and military training orchestrated the entire operation. Phase 2 begins now, she announces, producing a satellite phone that connects to networks the other participants didn't know existed. The warehouse was psychological warfare demonstrating that Prometheus division assets can't be eliminated through conventional operations. Now we escalate to strategic objectives. The phone call she makes will reshape the shadow world's power structure, but first they need to reach a position where the conversation can take place safely. Detroit's abandoned infrastructure offers multiple safe houses that Marian has prepared. Over years of careful planning, Mrs. Henderson clutches the portable drives, containing evidence that could rewrite modern history. While Torres and his men begin to understand that they've become participants in operations that extend far beyond anything their original mission briefing suggested, the warehouse battle was just the opening move in a game where the stakes include the survival of secret networks that shape global events. Phoenix has risen from 8 years of hiding, and the real war is about to begin. The safe house occupies the top floor of an abandoned automotive parts factory, its windows offering panoramic views of Detroit's skeletal skyline while concealed. Antenna arrays provide encrypted communication capabilities. Marian chose this location 3 years ago for its strategic advantages: multiple escape routes, civilian foot traffic that masks their presence, and proximity to infrastructure nodes that can be weaponized if necessary. Mrs. Henderson sits at a makeshift workstation, her fingers flying across keyboards as she coordinates with academic contacts across 6 time zones. The documentation she uploaded during their escape has triggered responses from universities, research institutions, and investigative journalism organizations worldwide. Within hours, the evidence of the Lazarus Network's operations will be distributed too widely for any suppression effort to succeed. Oxford wants to verify the financial transfer records, she reports. her voice carrying the excitement of a librarian who's discovered the historical find of a lifetime. MIT is requesting authentication protocols for the technical specifications. The International Criminal Court has opened preliminary inquiries based on the war crimes documentation. Torres studies surveillance feeds from cameras positioned throughout the industrial district, watching for signs that their enemies have tracked them to the new location. His Marines have adapted to the civilian environment with professional efficiency, but their tactical positioning reveals ongoing concern about threats that could emerge from any direction. How long before they find us? Rodriguez asks, checking the modified assault rifles that Marian provided from weapons caches hidden throughout the building. They won't, she replies, settling into the communication center's primary chair. This facility exists in bureaucratic dead space, officially condemned but never demolished, owned by shell corporations that exist only on paper. Even if they suspect our general location, finding this specific building would require resources that take time to deploy. The satellite phone in her hand represents technology that doesn't officially exist, connecting to networks that span continents while maintaining encryption that would challenge government code breakers. The call she's about to make will either end the shadow war or escalate it beyond any previous boundaries. Prometheus 7 to Council Prime, she says into the encrypted handset, using authentication codes that haven't been active for 8 years, requesting immediate conference under Protocol Omega. The response comes within seconds. Multiple voices joining the connection as the Lazarus Network's ruling council convenes an emergency session. She recognizes some of the vocal patterns colleagues from operations in Prague and Mogadishu, administrators who helped design the network's financial structures. But other voices carry unfamiliar accents and speech patterns that suggest the council's composition has evolved significantly during her absence. Phoenix, a voice she remembers as Director Carthage says, his tone mixing surprise with something approaching reverence. The reports of your termination were apparently exaggerated. The reports served their purpose, she replies, activating recording equipment that will preserve every word of the conversation. 8 years of operational freedom to investigate network activities from external perspectives. The results are disturbing. She triggers data streams that flood the Council's communication systems with evidence gathered during her years of investigation. Financial records showing profit margins that exceed ethical boundaries. Operational reports documenting civilian casualties that were deemed acceptable losses. Strategic planning documents that reveal conflicts manufactured purely for revenue generation. The silence that follows stretches for nearly 30 seconds, as 7 of the world's most powerful shadow government architects process evidence of their organization's corruption. When the conversation resumes, the voices carry defensive tension that confirms Marian's worst suspicions about the network's evolution. These allegations are... Director Babylon begins, his British accent struggling to maintain diplomatic composure, highly inflammatory and taken entirely out of context. The context, Marian interrupts, is $300 billion in revenue generated through manufactured conflicts that have killed approximately 2.7 million people across 17 countries. The network has become exactly what it was designed: to prevent a destabilizing force that profits from global chaos. Mrs. Henderson looks up from her workstation, her expression reflecting growing understanding of the conversation's implications. The elderly librarian is witnessing a shadow government being challenged by its own founder, a confrontation that will reshape global power structures regardless of its outcome. Director, Carthage's response carries the cold authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affect millions of lives. The network operates within parameters established by legitimate strategic objectives. Operational casualties are regrettable but necessary components of maintaining global stability. Stability? Marian's laugh carries 8 years of accumulated anger. Syria, Yemen, Myanmar, Somalia, these aren't strategic stabilization efforts. They're profit centers where human suffering generates quarterly revenue reports. The data streams continue flowing, revealing connections that even she hadn't fully understood until recent months. The network's tentacles extend into pharmaceutical companies that profit from refugee health crises, construction corporations that rebuild infrastructure they help destroy, financial institutions that manage currency fluctuations caused by their military operations. The Prometheus division exists specifically to prevent this kind of mission drift. She continues, accessing archived protocols that predate the current council's authority. When the network becomes the threat, we have operational authority to implement corrective measures. Torres and his men exchange glances that reveal growing comprehension of the conversation's stakes. They're witnessing the internal governance of organizations that shape global events from shadows, listening to debates that determine whether conflicts continue or cease across multiple continents. Babylon's voice carries threatening undertones when he responds. Prometheus division was disbanded following the Beirut incident. Current council authority supersedes historical protocols. Prometheus division can't be disbanded, Marian corrects, because it exists independently of council oversight. We're the network's immune system, designed to function autonomously when the body becomes infected. She pauses, letting the medical metaphor sink in. The question is whether the infection can be treated or requires surgical removal. The threat implicit in her words transforms the conversation from negotiation to ultimatum. The portable drives that Mrs. Henderson secured contain enough evidence to destroy careers, topple governments, and trigger international investigations that would expose the network's existence to public scrutiny. What do you want? Director Carthage asks, his tone acknowledging the shift in power dynamics. Complete operational restructuring, Marian replies, outlining demands she spent 8 years preparing. Immediate cessation of manufactured conflict operations. Full accounting of network assets with redistribution to humanitarian programs. Dissolution of the current council structure and implementation of oversight mechanisms that prevent future corruption. The counter-proposal comes from Director Rome, whose Italian accent carries the smooth confidence of someone who's negotiated with heads of state. Alternative suggestion: Prometheus 7 resumes active duty status under current protocols. Full operational authority within established parameters. Generous compensation for previous inconveniences. It's the offer she expected: rehabilitation disguised as reward, designed to bring her back into the network structure, where she can be monitored and controlled. The same strategy they've used to neutralize other potential threats over the years. Counter proposal, she responds, signaling to Mrs. Henderson, who begins initiating additional data uploads. You have 6 hours to begin implementing my restructuring demands. After that, every piece of evidence we've gathered gets released simultaneously to media outlets, law enforcement agencies, and rival intelligence services worldwide. The Damocles Protocol in action, not just personal insurance, but systematic exposure that would trigger investigations spanning decades and continents. The network's greatest strength, its interconnected secrecy, becomes its greatest vulnerability when faced with coordinated transparency. You're threatening to destroy everything we've built, Director Babylon says, his diplomatic composure finally cracking. I'm threatening to destroy everything you've corrupted, Marian corrects. The network's original mission, strategic stability through controlled operations, remains valid. But the profit-driven chaos you've created needs to end before it triggers conflicts that spiral beyond anyone's control. Mrs. Henderson's monitoring equipment shows academic institutions worldwide beginning to publish preliminary analyses of the evidence they've received. University researchers are connecting financial patterns that reveal manufactured crises. Investigative journalists are cross-referencing operational timelines with conflict escalations. The exposure process has already begun, making suppression efforts increasingly futile. Final offer, Director Carthage says, his voice carrying the weight of someone who's accepted inevitable defeat. Conditional implementation of restructuring protocols, phased over 18 months to prevent operational disruption. Prometheus Division receives restored autonomy with expanded oversight authority. It's more than she expected to achieve through negotiation. But Marian recognizes the tactical wisdom of accepting partial victory when complete triumph might trigger responses that endanger innocent lives. Acceptable as preliminary framework, she replies, with mandatory progress benchmarks and immediate cessation of active conflict. Manufacturing. Mrs. Henderson's documentation will serve as baseline evidence for monitoring compliance. The call ends with agreements that will reshape the shadow world's power structures. But Marian knows that negotiated settlements require enforcement mechanisms to prevent backsliding. The real work begins now, transforming promises into operational reality while defending against inevitable attempts to eliminate the witnesses to their corruption. Phoenix has risen not just from personal ashes, but as the catalyst for institutional resurrection. The Lazarus Network will be reborn, but this time with accountability mechanisms that prevent profit from overwhelming purpose. The Shadow War is ending, but the peace will require constant vigilance from guardians who remember what they swore to protect. 40-8 hours after the Council agreement, the first assassination attempt comes disguised as a gas leak explosion in the apartment building next to their safe house. Marian watches through surveillance feeds as emergency responders evacuate neighboring structures while forensic teams investigate what appears to be a tragic accident caused by aging infrastructure. Plausible deniability, she explains to Mrs. Henderson, who's monitoring news coverage of the incident. Network hardliners who oppose the restructuring are testing our defenses while maintaining operational security. They can't afford direct confrontation, but they can engineer circumstances that look like random urban decay. The elderly librarian has transformed from terrified hostage to strategic intelligence coordinator, her decades of information management experience proving invaluable for coordinating with academic institutions worldwide. Universities across 6 continents are now racing to authenticate and publish evidence that will reshape historical understanding of the past 2 decades. Cambridge has confirmed the Syrian Operation financial records, she reports, her voice carrying the satisfaction of a researcher who's uncovered definitive proof. The payment schedules directly correlate with weapons shipments to 3 different factions. Harvard's International Law Department is preparing formal charges for submission to The Hague. But Torres and his Marines remain focused on immediate tactical concerns. The building explosion demonstrates that their enemies are willing to accept civilian casualties to eliminate threats to network operations. Professional soldiers understand that negotiated truces mean nothing when participants choose to ignore agreements. Movement on the perimeter, Rodriguez announces, studying thermal imaging from concealed cameras positioned throughout the industrial district. 6 vehicles, professional spacing, approaching from multiple vectors. Marian activates defensive systems that transform their refuge into a fortress without alerting external observers. Hidden armor plating seals windows and doorways, while automated sensors track approaching threats. The abandoned factory becomes a deception, appearing vulnerable while concealing capabilities that rival military installations. Network special operations, she identifies, analyzing movement patterns displayed on tactical screens. They're not here for negotiation or evidence recovery. This is termination disguised as gang violence. The approaching teams carry equipment, signatures that suggest extensive preparation, military-grade communications, specialized weapons designed for urban warfare, explosive devices that can breach reinforced positions. Someone has authorized significant resources to eliminate the Prometheus Division witnesses despite the Council's agreement. "I thought you had a deal with these people," Chun says, checking ammunition supplies while positioning himself at a defensive choke point. "I have a deal with 7 council members who control strategic policy," Marian clarifies, her fingers flying across keyboards as she coordinates countermeasures. "But the network employs thousands of operatives who don't receive policy updates until after missions are completed. Some contracts were probably issued before our negotiation." Mrs. Henderson looks up from her workstation with alarm. "You mean they're trying to kill us because of bureaucratic timing?" "Welcome to shadow government operations," Marian replies grimly. "The left hand frequently eliminates the right hand while both serve the same organization." But her analysis of the tactical situation reveals something more disturbing than simple communication delays. The approaching teams are using equipment and tactics that suggest coordination with external organizations, specifically the Russian Special Forces, who participated in the warehouse assault. "This isn't network standard operating procedure," she realizes, highlighting anomalies in the attack patterns. "Someone's formed an alliance with foreign intelligence services to resolve this situation permanently." The revelation transforms their defensive planning from routine security measures to international crisis management. If Russian military assets are operating on American soil with network cooperation, the implications extend far beyond personal survival into diplomatic territories that could trigger official governmental responses. Torres studies the tactical displays with professional concern. "How do we handle foreign military operations without triggering an international incident?" "We don't handle them," Marian replies, activating communication systems that connect to networks she's avoided using until now. "We expose them." The phone call she makes connects to emergency lines at the FBI, CIA, and NSA simultaneously, using routing protocols that ensure the communication can't be traced, but will be taken seriously by all recipients. Within minutes, federal agencies receive detailed intelligence about foreign military operations in progress on American territory. "This is Prometheus 7 reporting unauthorized foreign military activity in Detroit industrial sector," she announces. Into the encrypted handset, Russian Spetsnaz units coordinating with domestic criminal organizations for assassination operations against American citizens. The response is immediate and overwhelming. Surveillance satellites redirect to monitor the situation while rapid response teams deploy from multiple federal facilities. The small war that began in an abandoned warehouse has escalated into a multi-agency crisis that will reshape official understanding of shadow operations. Mrs. Henderson watches news feeds as federal agencies coordinate responses to reports of foreign military activity. "You're using the government to fight the shadow government?" Sometimes the best way to stop illegal operations is to make them visible to legal authorities, Marian explains, monitoring federal communication channels through equipment that shouldn't exist. Network operations depend on invisibility. Federal attention destroys operational security more effectively than any weapon. The approaching assault teams suddenly find themselves operating in an environment where their every movement is tracked by federal surveillance systems. Helicopter flights redirect to monitor suspicious vehicle movements. Ground units deploy to investigate reports of automatic weapons in civilian areas. The tactical situation transforms from hunter versus prey to professionals caught in a law enforcement spotlight. But the network's response demonstrates why shadow organizations survive governmental oversight. Within hours, federal agencies receive contradictory intelligence that identifies the assault teams as law enforcement contractors conducting authorized anti-terrorism operations. Bureaucratic confusion creates operational windows that professionals can exploit. "They're good," Torres admits, watching how the assault teams use official confusion to advance toward their position, feeding false intelligence to federal agencies while maintaining operational momentum. Marian's expression hardens as she recognizes the specific deception techniques being employed. Not just good familiar. Someone with Prometheus division. Training is coordinating their information warfare. The revelation that another Prometheus operative might be working against them transforms the tactical situation from external threat to family betrayal. Prometheus division members know each other's operational patterns, security protocols, and psychological vulnerabilities in ways that make them uniquely dangerous opponents. Who else survived Beirut? Rodriguez asks, understanding immediately. Why this development changes everything. Officially, no one. Marian accesses archived personnel files that reveal the scope of what they're facing. Unofficially, Prometheus division members specialize in survival techniques that make death verification extremely difficult. The screens display photographs and operational records for 6 individuals who were reported killed in various incidents over the past 8 years. Each death was thoroughly documented with physical evidence and witness testimony, but Prometheus training includes techniques for manufacturing convincing mortality evidence. Mrs. Henderson studies the photographs with growing unease. You mean, there might be other people like you? Other Phoenix operators who faked their deaths? Prometheus 3 was reported killed in a car bombing in Istanbul, Marian reads from archive reports. Prometheus 5 died in a helicopter crash in Somalia. Prometheus 6 was eliminated during a prison break in Myanmar. She pauses, recognizing patterns that suggest systematic deception. But if I survived Beirut using staged death protocols, others might have used similar techniques. The tactical displays suddenly show movement patterns that confirm her worst suspicions. The approaching assault teams are using communication protocols and positioning strategies that only Prometheus division members would know, suggesting that their primary opponent isn't just network contractors, but potentially another foundational architect. Prometheus 3 to Prometheus 7. A voice announces over their secure communication channels, using authentication codes that were supposedly buried with the Istanbul car bombing. Request immediate conference under Protocol Alpha. The voice belongs to someone she worked with for 3 years, conducted 12 major operations alongside, trusted with her life in situations where trust meant survival. Alexander Volkov, codenamed Reaper, whose tactical brilliance made him legendary among shadow operatives before his reported death 5 years ago. Hello, Phoenix, the voice continues, carrying notes of affection mixed with regret. We need to discuss the terms of your surrender before this situation escalates beyond manageable parameters. Marian stares at the communication equipment, processing the implications of confronting someone who knows her operational patterns as thoroughly as she knows his. The warehouse battle was preparation for this moment, not just facing network contractors, but confronting another Prometheus division architect who's chosen a different path. Alex, she says into the handset, using the personal name she hasn't spoken in 8 years. I should have known you were too paranoid to actually die in Istanbul. His laugh carries the familiar warmth that made him one of the few people she trusted completely during her operational years. Paranoia keeps us alive in this business. But sometimes it puts us on opposite sides of situations we'd prefer to avoid. The reunion she never expected is about to become the confrontation she's feared since discovering that the network had been corrupted. Prometheus against Prometheus, architect against architect, with Mrs. Henderson and the Marines caught between. Loyalties that predate their current alliance. The real war is about to begin. And this time the enemy knows every strategy she might employ. The meeting takes place on the roof of the abandoned Ford River Rouge complex, where Detroit's industrial past stretches toward Lake Erie in a landscape of rusted steel and broken dreams. Marian arrives alone, as requested, though she knows Torres and his Marines are positioned in overwatch positions throughout the complex. Alexander Volkov stands at the roof's edge, his silhouette unchanged by 5 years of supposed death. You look good for a dead woman, he says without turning around. his Russian accent softened by years of deep cover operations. 8 years of library work apparently agrees with you. You look terrible for a ghost, she replies, noting how his frame has thinned, and his movements carry the careful precision of someone managing chronic pain. Istanbul wasn't as gentle as you made it appear. He finally turns to face her, revealing scars that map a geography of violence across features she once knew as well as her own. The car bombing that supposedly killed him was real enough. He simply survived it through techniques that most people wouldn't consider survival. 43 surgeries, he explains, reading her expression accurately. 18 months of rehabilitation. 27 pieces of shrapnel that couldn't be removed safely. He gestures toward the industrial wasteland surrounding them. But it gave me perspective on what we've become. The wind carries the scent of rust and stagnant water, Detroit's signature perfume of decay and persistence. Between them lies 8 years of separate paths that began from the same moment of disillusionment with the network they helped create. The council thinks you can be reasoned with, Alex continues, producing a tablet that displays financial records spanning decades. They've authorized me to offer terms that acknowledge your legitimate concerns while preserving operational continuity. Marian studies the numbers flowing across the screen: offshore accounts, investment portfolios, real estate holdings that represent wealth beyond most people's comprehension. The network's treasury, accumulated through years of manufactured conflict and strategic manipulation. $50 billion, she says, recognizing the scope of what they're offering. Complete financial independence for you and anyone you designate. As protected assets, Mrs. Henderson could endow a dozen universities with this amount. Along with operational command of the new Prometheus division, Alex adds, revealing the offer's true scope. Autonomous authority to investigate and regulate network activities with unlimited resources and no oversight restrictions. It's everything she demanded during the council negotiation, presented with additional incentives that demonstrate how badly they want this situation resolved. Complete victory disguised as generous compromise, designed to transform her from threat into partner. What's the catch? She asks, knowing that offers this generous always carry hidden costs. Alex's smile carries sadness that 8 years of separation haven't diminished. The catch is that accepting means abandoning the exposure operation. Mrs. Henderson's documentation gets classified under national security protocols. The academic publications cease. The evidence disappears into archives that exist but can never be accessed. The choice he's presenting crystallizes the fundamental question that's driven her actions since leaving the library 3 days ago. Personal victory versus systemic change. Individual power versus institutional transparency. The Shadow World's offer to make her its most powerful member in exchange for preserving its essential secrecy. They sent you because they knew I'd trust you, she realizes, understanding the psychological warfare being employed. 8 years of believing you were dead, and now you appear offering everything I thought I wanted. They sent me because I volunteered, Alex corrects, his voice carrying emotions that professional operators are trained to suppress. Because I knew you well enough to understand that you'd never accept this offer, regardless of how generous. The terms. The admission hangs between them like a confession. He's not here to negotiate her surrender. He's here to say goodbye before implementing whatever alternative the council has authorized when negotiation fails. The academic publications go live in 6 hours, she informs him, checking the secure phone that connects her to Mrs. Henderson's coordination network. 17 universities across 4 continents simultaneously, releasing authenticated evidence that will make suppression impossible. I know, he replies, producing a device that looks like a sophisticated radio, but whose purpose she recognizes with growing alarm, which is why the council authorized Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega, the network's nuclear option, designed for Scenarios where organizational survival requires sacrificing individual operations or entire geographical regions. She helped write the operational parameters 8 years ago, never imagining they might be used against her. EMP burst, she identifies, understanding how thoroughly they've prepared for this contingency. Targeted electromagnetic pulse that will disable electronic equipment across the entire Great Lakes region. Every computer, every server, every communication device within a 300-mile radius. Disguised as solar flare activity, Alex confirms, his finger hovering over the device's activation control. NASA will confirm unusual space weather patterns, while electrical grids experience temporary disruptions. The academic evidence disappears, along with everything else, blamed on natural phenomena that no one can investigate. The scope of what they're prepared to sacrifice demonstrates how existential they consider her threat to be. Disabling the electronic infrastructure of the American Midwest will cause economic damage measured in billions of dollars and disrupt millions of lives, but it will also erase every piece of digital evidence she's spent years accumulating. You'll kill thousands of people, she says, calculating the casualties that would result from widespread infrastructure failure. Hospitals, airports, emergency services, everything depends on electronic systems. Acceptable losses, he replies, using the phrase that's haunted both their careers. The network's survival justifies temporary disruption to civilian infrastructure. But Marian notices something in his posture that suggests internal conflict. The Alexander Volkov she knew for 3 years was ruthless when necessary, but he never embraced casualty acceptance with the casual indifference his words suggest. You don't want to do this, she observes, recognizing micro-expressions that indicate psychological stress. They threaten something you care about to ensure your cooperation. His hand trembles almost imperceptibly as he maintains position over the activation control. My daughter, he admits, naming the vulnerability that explains his presence here. 8 years old. Living in Prague under an identity that exists only as long as I fulfill my obligations to the Council. The revelation transforms their confrontation from professional opposition to personal tragedy. The network has weaponized parental love to ensure compliance, making Alex's loyalty conditional on his child's survival. Where is she? Marian asks, her tactical mind already calculating rescue scenarios. Safe house in Prague, he replies, understanding immediately where her thoughts are leading. Guarded by professionals who have orders to eliminate her if my mission status changes to compromise or failure. The deadlock appears absolute. He can't refuse to activate Protocol Omega without condemning his daughter, while she can't allow the EMP burst without sacrificing millions of innocent lives and destroying evidence that could reform the entire shadow world. But Mrs. Henderson's voice crackles through Marian's earpiece with information that changes everything. Phoenix, the uploads are complete. All 17 universities received full documentation packages. Even if their servers are destroyed, the evidence exists in physical archives that can't be electronically erased. The revelation that the exposure operation has already succeeded transforms the tactical situation completely. Protocol Omega might destroy digital evidence, but it can't eliminate printed documents, photocopied records, and physical archives that are now distributed across multiple continents. It's over, Alex, she says gently, watching Relief war with resignation in his expression. The evidence is already out there in forms that EMP bursts can't touch. The network lost this battle the moment Mrs. Henderson started coordinating with academic institutions. He lowers the activation device, his shoulders sagging as 8 years of accumulated stress finally overwhelms professional conditioning. Then they'll implement Protocol Samson, he says, naming the network's ultimate contingency plan. Complete organizational dissolution with terminal sanctions against all personnel who possess compromising intelligence. Protocol Samson. Shadow World's suicide option. designed to eliminate the organization entirely rather than allow its secrets to be exposed. Every safe house destroyed, every operative eliminated, every record incinerated in a coordinated purge that would erase the Lazarus network from existence. Not all personnel, Marian corrects, producing communication equipment that connects to federal agencies monitoring their conversation. Mrs. Henderson documented everything, including your daughter's location. FBI extraction teams are already en route to Prague. The satellite phone in her hand displays real-time updates from law enforcement agencies across 3 continents. International cooperation, triggered by evidence of shadow government operations, has resulted in coordinated raids against network facilities worldwide. It's over, she repeats, watching federal helicopters approach the Rouge complex as their conversation concludes. The shadow war ends here, but the people caught in its machinery don't have to die with it. Alex drops the EMP device over the roof's edge, watching it shatter against concrete 40 feet below. 8 years, he says, his voice carrying exhaustion that penetrates deeper than physical fatigue. 8 years of believing we were dead to the world. We were, Marian replies, placing a hand on his shoulder as federal agents begin surrounding the building. But sometimes death is just another kind of beginning. The sun sets over Detroit's industrial landscape as emergency services respond to reports of foreign military operations while academic institutions worldwide begin publishing evidence that will reshape historical understanding of the past 2 decades. Mrs. Henderson coordinates with prosecutors, preparing cases that will take years to fully investigate. Phoenix rises not from ashes of destruction, but from the flames of transparency that burn away shadows where evil flourished in darkness. The Lazarus network dies as it lived in secrecy, but its death gives birth to accountability that will prevent similar organizations from taking its place. Marian Scott returns to her library work, but now she catalogs evidence of shadow wars alongside Detroit's industrial archives. The quiet life she built becomes the foundation for ensuring that the truth, once revealed, can never again be buried in bureaucratic darkness. Some tattoos mark endings. Others mark the beginning of worlds reborn. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.